Hello, and welcome to Check It Out Comrade, an indie game podcast where every 2 weeks we bring you two indie games and tell you what we like about them. I'm Nick Glauber.
And I'm Gary Butterfield.
And this week we're doing The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt.
Every 2 weeks we sometimes bring you one indie game that isn't an indie game, but we will tell you what you like about it.
yeah. This fits a real rough description of indie. But
what are you gonna say, Nick? If somebody corners you in an alley and says, "Explain yourself,"
I would say that that CD Projekt they started out indie and created the Witcher series all on their own without any major publishing, and this may be essentially a AAA title, but that's because they've been making mad money with GOG. So they got the budget for it.
And with Witcher 1 and 2, which are both pretty successful.
That's true too, yeah. They were pretty successful, those games. Especially elsewhere in the world, like in Europe and stuff, this game is huge.
Yeah, as well it should be.
Yeah.
It has an indie spirit.
Yes.
But it's really, I think this is probably a little bit of a cheat, but that's okay because I wasn't going to get a chance to play this for assignment otherwise.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we both wanted to check it out. So that's pretty much our excuse. But
and the Comrade part fits with the Eastern Bloc origins of this. So
yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Witcher 3, as I said, it's developed by CD Projekt Red, who is a development group in somewhere Polish. They're from Poland. And they released this game on Windows, PS4, and Xbox One on May 2015. I think the console ports might have been at some other time, but that's the first release date was May 19th. And it is a action role playing game, a Western RPG, single player, and it's quite good. Yeah,
I should point out real quick, the reason why I have it is Jeremy Greer bought it for me.
Oh, Jeremy.
That's very nice. It was on sale, but I could not get it at the time, and he picked it up for me. It was very sweet of him.
Very sweet.
And I didn't know whether I'd have time to play it, so that's another reason why it's good that we're doing the episode.
Yeah, we had to
on it.
set aside a couple weeks to play it. So
it's great. Let's talk about why it's great.
Sure. Yeah. And real quick, just to kind of put us in spot here, this is a very large, very long game.
We didn't beat it.
No, and
this is not to watch out for fireballs on Witcher 3.
Exactly. We're still going to do just a quick look at it, but we did, I believe, Gary, beat the Bloody Baron storyline.
Yes, which is the main quest of the first act.
Yeah.
So it is the main, like 1/3 of the main thing.
Right. Yeah. It's the storyline quest line, essentially right out the gate of the game. And comprises essentially the first third of the game, not including the two big DLCs they've released since.
Yes. So to put it in kind of perspective, I don't know exactly how many hours into it I am. Between 10 and 20, probably even more because I had a lot more of this quest than I thought. I still have side stuff to do, but I'm probably going to end up with the main quest of this end up at like the 70-hour mark if I had to guess, 70 or 80.
Yeah, I would presume so as well. I'm at 31. I'm not sure if any of that's been idle, but I've done a lot of side questing and just kind of roaming around too. So
me too, because it's fun.
It is fun.
So when we say let's kind of break down. So for people who's this episode for? So like this is we're going to talk about like some of the stuff kind of this like kind of critically the normal Check It Out Comrade thing. But I also want to say that we're going to talk about storyline stuff a little bit in the second half. So if you don't know, if you're thinking about taking the plunge, this first half will kind of function as a review. The second half is just going to be our thoughts about it. But there's lots of generalities we can get into without spoiling things.
Yeah.
Without going full watch out for fireballs, which is always going to be my my impulse with this thing. But the thing that struck me about this, and you may vary, is that like this is such a good kind of triumph of world building.
Yeah.
And writing, because no individual system in this game, I think, is remarkable, right? Like the individual actual systems, there's nothing that feels like I haven't seen this before. The detective vision stuff is worse than the Arkham version of that.
Batman stuff, yeah.
The combat is worse than Dark Souls. The crafting and stuff is, I guess, good, but like it doesn't. It's still frustrating.
it's the same as every other.
Yeah, you're walking.
game.
It's just like Dragon Age Inquisition, where you're walking around picking everything up. The actual like things you do in quests are not that exciting.
Right.
Like the mechanics. If you were to strip this away and just have it be a wireframe, you go to a place and kill a thing, like 9 times out of 10.
Right.
Or you deliver a thing to a thing, or you go to a place and investigate a thing. Lots of tracking, things like that. Like your actual verb set is really limited.
Right.
But that world building and writing and stuff makes all of it great.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why this won a bunch of Game of the Year awards, and why I'm going to play it to completion, and why it's so good.
Yeah, and it's not like the systems have any more depth than your Skyrims or anything, right? So
I would say it has a little bit more. Like you can dodge. You have to do a lot of preparation for combat. Like what difficulty are you playing it on?
I'm playing on like the step up from I forget what it's
Blood
called,
and
but
Broken Bones.
yeah, that's
Me too.
and I was saying that in a positive light, right? Like this isn't the same things you can critique about this not really having all that much depth you could say about most Western RPGs in terms of the actual mechanical systems. This tends to actually have more depth because of the preparation and such that you were referring to.
Like the preparation part reminds me of Baldur's Gate. Like when you play Baldur's Gate, that's where that combat depth comes from. Is getting ready for combat and preparing for situations and having counters to things.
Right.
It's huge. Here.
Absolutely.
And that, I guess, if there is one system that you don't see very often that this actually indulges in, it's that. But if you're playing on normal, you never have to deal with that. It just kind of becomes easy Dark Souls.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And that is how my build has been oriented so far too, is towards the sort of alchemy side, with more kind of put into using more oils and more potions, on top of a little bit of the sign usage, especially. What is it, like Quen or something?
Yeah,
that is the shield. So good.
Yeah, the shield is really necessary.
So yeah, I'm really enjoying that preparation part of it too, and that I think is the one thing that brings some real crunch to the combat and actually makes it enjoyable, despite being, like you said, a real light Dark Souls or similar.
Pretty standard, but it still ends up being really fun, just because of that difficulty. Like you ramp it up and you really have to prepare, and you have to really be smart about like your timing when you're doing things. Like the Quen is worth talking about on its own, just as far as like the way that influences the flow of combat. Like, so for people who don't know, it's like a shield you put up that blocks you from one hit, essentially. But it's on a recharge, like a universal recharge for doing magic. So like you have that, and it kind of functions as poise. Like you can walk in and tank a hit. Right. And get in on some of these things, but it's limited, and you have to kind of space out when you can use it.
Right. And to augment that, you have two sort of dodge mechanics. One is just kind of a sidestep in any direction that you're currently holding, and the other is a dodge roll, essentially, which I actually changed my key bindings for those and reversed them, because the sidestep is like a million times more useful than the roll is.
I've been rolling around like crazy, and it's not the best way to play. And the reason being is it puts you away from the action.
Exactly.
So like that's why maybe you don't want to do it. But they're both, like, it's cool to have both tools.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you have your light and your strong attack. Like, it's all pretty simple. Like a block, a really really rudimentary parry that you can do. But it just, like, these systems kind of add up to each other. Like the whole kind of point of this game is more than the sum of its parts, I feel like.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the thing about those potions, which are a really cool thing, that crunch, is powered by this crafting thing that I'm not super into. But what they did that I really like is that you can almost 100% ignore it. Like, there's this weird ways, like when I play Western RPG, the two like really really fun kind of parts for me is like finding cool new stuff, and leveling up, and neither of those feel that great in this game. Like,
I agree.
You walk up to a chest and I'm just gonna suck everything out of it. Just tap 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 tap. And then I get to a level up, and none of the powers are that good. But just getting things from chests powers up that or powers that potion engine, so you don't have to actually turn into a hunt, like go get 10 lilacs to make this thing work. And then the actual power ups you get once you get going, like I'm at level I think 11 now. When that difficulty ramps up, you start having to focus on a build, and you have the context to actually know what matters, so it starts working.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really weird how it spends so much time not really like working. Like, I don't think this game makes a really great first impression.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, I had the same problem with the potions and stuff as well. It wasn't until I had enough potions like in my inventory that I wanted to make use of multiple of them that I even learned what the hell the toxic system was.
Yeah, that's like this game has so many systems and
Hmm.
they are not very well explained.
Not at
Like the
all.
tutorializing in this game is not good. And it's so fiddly. Like there's potions, there's also detoxins or
Hmm.
decotoxins or whatever those things are
Right.
called. Like there's a lot of weird little things like that. Like, and it doesn't do a good job of explaining to you that when you craft a potion, it's not like a single use; it becomes like an Estus,
Yeah, it recharges on every
and that's what everything
meditation.
does. You know,
Yep.
if you have the materials, it just recharges. That took a long time for me to get used to where I was like furiously eating snacks during battles because I didn't want to waste my potions.
Yeah.
You know, it just I think I'm sure it says that during the tutorial, but like it's really inelegant the way it kind of presents it, so it's pretty easy to miss information.
Yeah, I mean I don't even know if it does state anything about the alchemy and potions and stuff
Yeah,
during the tutorial. I think it's pretty light on that, and it's worth noting too. Neither Gary nor I played much of or any of the original two. We're coming into the Witcher series for the most part on this game, which is also widely agreed to be the best of them.
yeah.
One I hear is really rough, and two is supposed to be better. It's supposed to be a pretty good game, but Witcher 3 is the
This is much more
culmination, and
playable.
yeah,
Like one, I've put something like 35 hours into starting 3 times.
yeah.
And it's really the world building stuff and everything is still there, but it's
Mhm.
the mechanics are not good enough for it. But one of the things that kind of fucks me over playing the third one, or two things that I want to say real quick about like the legacy part of it, I guess,
Yeah.
is in the first one you have to rest at specific spots.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure. So that's the other reason why potions kind of fucked me over. Is even when I knew that you could recharge your potions by meditating, I kept looking for like campfires or bonfires or something
Right.
without kind of skipping the option in the menu. But the other thing too is that like it's kind of popular opinion that you don't need to play the earlier entries in this,
Mhm.
and I think that's true. But I think I would probably have liked the game more if I knew more of these characters. Like,
Yeah,
do you get that
I
sense? Like, it feels a little bit like walking into a movie 20 minutes after it started.
absolutely no. That's definitely something I'm noticing too. I think mechanically you don't need to know
No.
anything. Like the game is crunchy and good regardless of whether or not you play the other two, but they throw you into characters that have long developed relationships that you're just now seeing, and so they're talking with dialogue that has a familiarity and a hit backstory that you're completely unaware of if you haven't played any of the previous games. So you pick up from cues what's going on, but it's not. It's
You don't. It doesn't have emotional impact. Like
right, and it's
you know the
supposed to be a
mechanics of the plot, but you don't know what it
right.
means.
And they're for the player who's played all of them, they're callbacks to points of reference they know, that are helping to direct them into what's going on in the storyline now.
Mhm.
We don't have that, so we're just getting kind of loose frayed ends thrown at us that we just have to shrug aside because we don't know what the hell is they're trying to aim us towards.
And the this kind of culminates. Like the worst part of that, I think, is there's a option really early on where it says like, "Do you want to simulate a Witcher 2 save?"
Mhm.
Did you say yes to that?
I don't even remember.
Well, did you get the scene in the this is I mean it's not really a spoiler in the Capitol where the guy kind of shaves you and asks you a
Yeah,
bunch of questions?
uh, yeah, I don't remember particularly the questions or anything, but I remember that scene. Yes.
If that happened, that's what simulate Witcher 2 save does. Is
Okay.
it gives you that scene because it's giving you a chance to choose options.
Hmm.
But that is really poorly handled because you don't know who anyone is. It's like when you left, did you help Triss onto the horse or did you doom Yennefer to a fiery death or whatever? And I don't know which one of those which one of those I would have done.
Right.
So there's no role playing opportunity in that, and that's kind of a bummer. Like I think this game does a kind of a. I mean, I really love this game. It's gonna sound like I'm trashing it. It does a bad job of making like standing alone. Like I don't think
Yeah.
they ever really wanted to make a standalone game. I think they knew how to make it mechanically standalone, but didn't know how to make it narratively standalone.
Right.
Especially since the main kind of person you're focused on, this girl named Siri, um, my understanding is a fairly important character from the second game, who Geralt like definitely really cares about, who I don't know from
Right.
anybody. You know,
Exactly.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. That's and that that's the main hook of the game. So you just have to kind of go with it when you're when you're not aware. Like, all right, I mean, I'm along for the ride, but I wish you guys had given me more of a hook here. Um, I I still like the intro where you're with her when she's young at the school and stuff. Like it's all still entertaining, but there's obvious gaps that are hard to ignore.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's still, it does a decent job of that, of like
Right.
teaching, getting you to feel something for a character you haven't met. But it
Yeah.
doesn't do like a perfect job for it, especially if that character is going to carry almost all of the narrative weight. And they do, even throughout the game, they kind of you get to spend some more time with her and learn a little bit more about her. So you start caring about her a little bit more, but it's kind of a weird thing where like that still did not end up being the like the draw for this. It was not like this thing
Right.
that the game is telling me it's really is the draw. It's these little side characters and side situations and stuff in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And boy, what a world.
It's really good.
It is. It's really good, and it's massive. The amount of just sheer stuff to do. Like as soon as you get the ball rolling, there's just a map full of question marks that if you just felt like going and finding out what all there is to do, you can like spend countless hours just doing every little bit of thing that is available to you.
And that's been a back of the box thing since Skyrim, or since Elder Scrolls games, and that's a thing that they said would be true of Dragon Age Inquisition and stuff. And the reason why this is better than those games is that the things you go and do, I mean, there are some things that are right out of the box, like it's like, oh, here are just some monsters.
Right.
That happens, with some frequency. But much more often than that, or you end up in these little side quests that have like, voice acting and cutscenes and characterization, and are actually pretty cool. Like it's like they made the version of a big style MMO world without filler content.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable, like what the average of kind of writing is in this game, because there's a lot of little cool little wrinkles and subversions and stuff to these quests. So
Yeah.
like the first half of the world, like, or the first kind of area of the tutorial, and this is not super spoilery, but like you're in this area that has been kind of torn apart by war, and all the side quests are about how this war has impacted like common people.
Right. Yeah. The lowest, because this is it's like a feudal society here, so you're talking to the peasantry.
Mm-hmm. And
who need your help. That's what your job is.
Yeah, like exactly. You're doing a job, which is also a really great narrative kind of framework for this, because one, that gets rid of the cognitive dissonance of whether you want to accept a reward for things. Like most people won't even let you not take a reward. Like they just know this is your job and you have to do it. It's really great.
What a great hook! Holy shit.
It's really like it works really, really well. But just like so rather than like, yes, you might have to go down to the swamp and go kill 10 zombies, essentially. But the reason the zombies are there is because the corpses haven't been cleaned up since this war. And the reason the corpses haven't been cleaned up is because this commander can't get the funding to do so, because this town has been holding out on them in supplies. And the reason they're doing that, like, there's just these webs of context for things that make it feel not generic.
Absolutely.
And that's great. Like that is what I'm missing from Skyrim, or like, all these little question marks on the map could easily have just been Dragon Quest Inquisition style, go collect 10 dealies, but they're not. Like you don't spend time doing that, really.
And there's plenty of stuff that's also just like, oh, you ran into a bunch of bandits.
Sure.
And this is their bandit camp. But there's also even some of like the lesser just random side quests, right? Which none of them are random, by the way. It's not like Skyrim.
Like Radiant, Radiant AI, which is a mistake.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah.
But some of them, even though they feel real low level, are really cool. Like you can run into a camp of bandits who are around some abandoned buildings, and when you clear them out, you've restored a little town.
Yeah.
And now there's people there who want to sell you stuff and thank you for your help. Like it's awesome.
It really feels like there is this sense of, because when people talk about consequence in games, it's always on this macro scale, where you're making the big Mass Effect choice, and that either does this big narrative thing or this other big narrative thing, which I understand is a big part of the series. But this kind of does that on a smaller level as well, where like even down to this little, helping out one of the major, the main quest, there is one of those big choices like that, but it has ramifications that trickle down way further than you initially think.
Yeah, you can finish the storyline quest having made a choice and skip the part that it actually affects.
Yeah,
It's a side quest. It's an optional side quest.
And you don't know whether it is a good or bad choice.
Yeah.
Which is something, again, that BioWare has really strove to do, but has not done a good job of,
Yeah.
for the most part. And this does a much better job.
That's definitely something I wanted to comment on too. Like, I really enjoy that there isn't a morality system to this game.
Yeah.
It gives you moral questions and puts you in situations where you can, decide your own level of morality, but it doesn't have any grander effect outside of the people immediately affected.
Yeah. Nobody looks at you and says like, oh, that guy has a bad karma meter.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, like, the game doesn't wag its finger at you for doing things. Like, the situations you're in where you're saying, when you're refusing to help or you're doing the ostensibly evil thing, it's always for an understandable reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, oh, I don't want to get involved in this. Like,
right.
okay. Like, that totally makes sense. Like, this isn't your job, and maybe the situation is more complicated than you know. Or maybe that's like dark magic and it's not, you don't have time for it because you have a sense of urgency to your main quest. Like, all these things, when you do the thing that would be a bad decision in any kind of lesser game, it is not framed as such in this one. So it has the sense of being beyond good and evil that feels, for a game that is about like zombies and cat-eyed magic men, like feels more realistic than Skyrim.
It's fantastic. It's the one big RPG of this scale I feel could actually like really pull me in, because I haven't stopped feeling great about connecting storylines and making choices and all these things. I never get trapped into some position that I feel like the game is just putting there to affect replayability.
Yeah.
Like, it just wants me to go through their story and make my own story out of it. And when I'm done, they're done and everybody's happy.
It really respects your time. Like, there's not, it's so weird to see something this big that doesn't feel padded.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really unusual. Something else that's like in generalities that I want to touch on real quick is in the writing is how kind of goofy and funny the translation, I guess, is. So this is based on a series of books, like they're very popular fantasy books in Europe that I want to try reading at some point, because I kind of have genuinely grown to really like this character.
Yeah.
But there's this weird, I don't know if it's a translation thing or what, but every once in a while, and not even every once in a while, frequently kind of modern slang slips in, and it's really funny. Like, the very first thing you can do when you start this, like, you just, you're in this romantic moment with this lady, you get the sense they just boned down earlier. You get out of the bath, you have this walk around the place, you go out and look at the mountains, and your guy goes like, shit, these are beautiful. It's so funny. God, is that good? Shit. You smell like shit. You smell like ass. Like, it's so weird. It's very funny. And the game is like, has this kind of puerile sense of humor to it in general that I kind of dig.
Yeah, and Geralt's just like, he's a lovable little goof too. Like,
his voice actor is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, it's been the same voice actor for the whole series, which is pretty important,
Yeah, that's amazing.
And he's really good. That kind of flat delivery. And this is the first, I don't know if this happens in the second one. It didn't happen that I could see in the first one, where people start kind of like, they start making fun of it a little bit. Every once in a while, a character will like kind of call him on this, and it's really good.
This game, I think we probably want to work on getting into some more of the storyline stuff, which we will put in the spoiler section for you guys. But I think it's pretty safe to say that that we really enjoy this game. Like, I'm a huge fan so far, and I went into it, hearing really good things, but expecting it to essentially be, Eastern Europeans' answer to Skyrim, and it's just like,
no, it's just on a different level.
It's on a completely different level.
And that's, I went into it thinking, because it doesn't look unlike Dragon Age Inquisition, which is a game I really had a lot of problems with. I don't think it's very good. And I was expecting that, and enough people who I trust were like, hey, I know what you like. I know what you don't like. You'll like this, and like I had to go over that initial hump because I don't think it presents itself very well in the beginning. But once I got there, I'm way into it. One of the things we talked about a couple of times is that, like, if Bonfireside Chat, if we run out of Dark Souls games to cover, they stop making them, and we run out of Souls likes and stuff. Instead of ending the show, maybe transitioning it to a show that's about other series that can kind of handle that approach. Yeah. And the number one I want to do is The Witcher.
Yeah, anything with that sort of lore aspect.
Yeah,
is gonna fit that setting well. Yeah.
The world is just really strong in this, and we'll talk about that more in the spoiler section. But it is the sense of like how grounded the fantastical elements are in this is really unheard of. Like this is a low fantasy game, to put it in kind of tabletop terms, and is among the better expressions of that idea that I've seen in any game, like be it tabletop or video.
And one quick comment I really want to make on that is that the like plethora of humanoid and non-humanoid races in here are all really cool designs.
Oh yeah, man, the designs on the monsters are really fantastic. Like I kept calling them zombies because that's easy, but they're not zombies. They're like these weird bloated gas things.
Yeah.
That like have these really, really long, intricate bestiary entries that are like good reads, like are pretty cool little bits of lore. And the reason why they're so cool is that everything feels like, I was talking about this on Twitter, all the fantastical and magical elements, a lot of them are based in like European folktales.
Right.
Even when they're not, they feel like they are.
They absolutely do, yeah.
And I didn't even know I was missing that, So like, it makes me not want to fight. Like as much as I love like kobolds and shit, it's like I know what goblins are. Like that's not very cool. These are significantly cooler because they're that weird level of strangeness.
Yeah.
And
I love how much of it too is like definitely rides on that folktale level of like something tragic happening to someone and that transforming them into some sort of monstrosity. It's really cool. And there's like multiple levels of different types of things that people will turn into based on terrible situations. And then when you actually have to fight them, you have to adapt your fight to their specific type of monstrosity.
Or not fight, like how you're dealing with them, because they can be dealt with in these other kind of folksy magical ways. And that plays into, it's very important that your main character, this is not a hero and is not a knight. He's somebody whose job it is to know about the world. Your job is to know about these magical races and stuff. So like to you, it is just work. Like there's an element of mechanics to it, like, or impartialness. Like it is not like this is a monster that is evil. It just is what it is. And your character treats it as such.
Yeah. It's great.
Really, really good approach. And I would love to see more of it. So when we're going to keep playing it, maybe if we've beat it or gotten further, when we do our wrap up, we can do a Witcher 3 check-in.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But yeah, I'm gonna play it more tonight. Like I'm way into it.
Yeah, I'm way into it too. I'm definitely gonna be playing it. It's gonna be real slow goings from here. I'm glad I got to where I got to, but it's definitely got its claws into me enough that I will keep coming back to it for hopefully till I beat it.
Yeah. I will be surprised if I don't beat it. The question is just whether I get a chance to beat it before, Tides of Numenera or
exactly.
or Divinity Original Sin 2.
It's just time.
All these other games that are big WRPGs that I want to cover for the show and play anyway. But yeah,
all right.
Really good. I'm really glad I finally took the plunge. And thank you again to Jeremy, and thanks to everybody who recommended.
Yeah, it's definitely been.
And thanks to Nick.
Yeah, I don't think we have any specific names of people being like, you should play this on Comrade, because, like, as we said, this is kind of cheating the format a bit, but it's definitely been highly recommended to both of us for quite many people. So.
Outside of Comrade.
Yeah. So let's get some admin stuff going so we can talk about some of the storyline. So if you would like to help the show out or any of the shows on the Duckfeed.tv network, you can contribute to our Patreon, patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. A couple bucks a month there helps us all out. That's how we manage to keep doing this. That is our number one source of support. So we send you cool stuff. We let you come hang out in our Slack, which is always great fun. So if you have any change lying around, that's a great way to support the network. Yeah,
lets us buy games.
Yeah.
And ratings, reviews, and iTunes, those are all very appreciated. Thanks to everybody who wrote reviews and everybody who wrote in generally to let us know about the clicking noise. We're working on it. It should be gone in this episode, but if it is not, we are zeroing in on the problem, and we do apologize for that.
Yeah, we'll dig into a little bit of possible solutions. We're trying one tonight. If it doesn't work out, then we'll look into some others.
Yep. So thanks everybody, and a short musical break, and we're going to talk about the main part of the first act quest of The Witcher 3.
Rory's hungry.
Yeah, Rory's does want to eat. But tough shit. Tough shit.
Pam param.
Yeah. So I don't want to chat about like every like single little thing that happens.
We don't. So we don't have time for that.
Yeah, we don't have time for it. But what are some highlights? What are some really cool bits of this for you?
I really enjoyed the piece with Jacob. I believe his name was. So I like that whole setting of the the wife getting kind of pulled into these spirits and trapped with them, and that there's like this little forest spirit kid who needs your help, but also helps you to get her out of that situation. Or Johnny,
Johnny's
sorry, not Jacob. You're right.
Yeah, the
Johnny.
godling.
God, yeah, that kid is the coolest design, and he's like super fun. Like, one of the most enjoyable characters.
Taking dumps. He talks about taking dumps constantly.
He does love taking shits in the like as the sun's coming up.
And it's such a weird, again, like the way that this game gets away with being so so silly about that. Just like really, really works.
I love his I love his character design, and I think he's like really well animated and voiced, and I like that's just a really great character who, as soon as I ran into him, I was like, holy shit.
And in the first half of this, where I talked about how like what you're doing is bland, but the context matters. So when you need this guy to come help you, he can't talk to you. What you actually do is you go to a place and kill some monsters. But the reason why is because this group of harpies in a nest have stolen his voice and kept it in a jar. Like it's this weird sense of like low folk magic to everything that happens that like just makes it have this flavor that makes like the blandness like kind of melt away. Yeah, you know, because it's like I'd be lying if I said I wasn't kind of sick of like fighting drowners. You know, you spend a lot of time fighting drowners.
You sure do.
But like usually it's in service of something bigger, like that. Right. In that quest, which is the main kind of how this ends. Like, so there's the Bloody Baron who hires you to find his wife and daughter. Find his daughter, and it kind of comes out that he's a drunk shithead. You know, and I think the game tries to make it seem like, you know, you could have some sympathy for him. I more or less just like, no, this is totally your fault. You shouldn't hit your wife and daughter. I have no sympathy.
Most of the dialogue options are towards that end. Yeah. Though. Like to be fair, like you can kind of give him some leeway if you're like, okay, I understand. This is a whole story. You know, you're a person. There's more to you than just being a drunk. But most of the options are like, nah, dude. No, like, this is completely your fault.
You can continually say like, no, this is totally your fault. You're a piece of shit, which I really love. But you find out. So his daughter, you know, is kind of a non-starter. You go and find her. His wife is the tricky part, which you find through another quest. You just kind of stumble across her. The quest where you find her, where you're dealing with, because like Geralt is very funny because he only likes sorceresses with huge tits. It's like the entirety of like what turns his crank in later games. In the first one, he was like having sex with everybody. Now it's just sorceresses with huge tits. He has this huge type. But if you follow that quest, is it necessary to do the date quest with her? Like where you guys go on the date? The Cinderella quest?
I don't think so. Wait. With Kira Metz?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all part of it, right? Yeah.
That's really good because it's like a sex scene, and it frames it like a little bit like it's going to be a shitty BioWare sex scene where you put in the right combination of buttons to make this computer thing have sex with another computer thing, you know. But it's not that. Like, one, it's very funny. You're kind of going through on this date. You start kind of like looking through this trail and things and doing your detective thing, and she just straight up says like, you don't have to do that. Like, we're on a date, which is very funny. Two, but the reason why you go and bone down is because she's manipulating you to get information out of you. Right. So it's like it's the sex scene through characterization thing that I really love. You eventually follow those leads from her, and you find these witches in the woods, this swamp thing. And like just when I talk about the translation kind of coming awesome, where it's poorly translated. Yeah, like. The same thing hags use in this game to lure children, I use to get Roars to go to the vet. Like, it's like you just lay out the trail of treats. And hearing Geralt like be like, the trail of treats. Like, it's very funny. That's so good. All these treats. And during that sex part, there's a part where you're like, I'm a witcher, not a gigolo. Like these modern like terms that sneak in there just make it so silly. But that trail of treats thing is really great. And then the actual hags, like, oh my God.
They're gruesome.
Oh man, those are good designs.
And the way they're just like so into Geralt too.
Yeah, like
and just like coming onto him.
Yeah. Some thirsty ladies, dude. Like, I'll be your best and your last. Like, it is just.
It's incredible.
It's real good. So that's the big major choice, you know. So you find his wife. She has been kind of ensorcelled by these hags and kind of enslaved. The hags say, go to a service for this guy in the town. The town says there's a spirit in the woods that's killing our people. That kind of forms the big quest. You go kill a spirit. You think you're just supposed to kill a spirit. You get there and you find the druid, which is this like rotten, pulsating heart of this tree. I had a glitch during this part where one of the audio channels cut out. so that part was just subtitles whenever the tree would talk to me, which was kind of awesome. Like it
That
looked
sounds
like,
great.
yeah, it looked like it was just like beaming it directly into the player's mind, which I really loved. But you had this choice whether to go along with your original mission or save the kids.
Right.
Which one did you do?
So I ended up doing the. I kind of cheated this one. I looked up what kind of the options were because I wanted to see what the good resolution was essentially. But you can actually trick it.
Yes.
And that was a really fun way of going about it. I really liked that option. So I told it that I would help it do this ritual that would allow it to be freed from this entrapment under the tree, which required me to go just do some fetch quests. But I brought the items back, and then I was given the option to not do the final part of the ritual, which would be to stab it and to bleed it out, which would finalize and commit the ritual. So Geralt starts the ritual off. He gets all the items laid out, and then he's like, "I'm not going to finish this off." And then the thing just like is super pissed and shrieks and shrivels and dies without you having to fight anything, which is essentially the resolution to it that you get for tricking it, as opposed to just saying no outright.
Which then you had to fight it, or you had to fight its minions.
It's minions, yeah, exactly.
I also had that. I have a very distinct moment of like wanting to look up the thing. That's what I did as well, but I didn't look up the solutions because I know like that's the game wants you to not do it. So I resisted really hard. If you don't do that, I did look up what I didn't do though. So like there's no way in hell I wasn't going to like figure it out. Because what you're doing in that situation is that the tree is telling the truth. Like if you save it, it saves the kids.
Right.
So like both you and I damned those kids.
Yes.
Those kids died because of us. There's no like good ending to it. Right. And the woman, the Baron's wife, is doomed if you do that as well.
She's more doomed in the other way though. She like offs herself in the other option.
If you you're right, yeah. If you don't do the
because I think something happens.
She becomes a sea hag. She gets turned into a monster.
Yeah.
That cannot, and you can free her spirit, and then the Baron hangs himself.
Oh, he hangs himself.
Yes, if you help the tree spirit.
Yeah.
Because she gets punished because she let the kids go.
Right.
Like she failed against the tree spirit.
So yeah, I essentially did better by the wife and the Baron than I did by
the village
spirit.
Because the village gets killed if you let the spirit out too.
Yep.
But you sacrificed a bunch of kids.
I sacrificed.
So it's like it's the good ending, but there's no good.
There's no good.
That whole family drama with the Baron I think is really compelling because he starts out he's got this really fearsome name. You learn that it's just they like play with your emotions because then you learn that it's just a legend, and you meet him, and the first thing you reminded me of was King Robert from Game of Thrones.
100%.
Yeah, where I'm like, I think that probably was an influence, like in that performance. Like this is kind of a drunk, but you're kind of sympathetic to him. He maybe didn't want this. He didn't want this family, or he wanted the family, but it's a little bit outside of his control. And then as you learn more and more about the kind of their relationship and get to see it unfold, you realize like he's really shitty, but the damage is already done.
Right.
Like there's no undoing it. Like you can take his side and be like, no, you should definitely like go back to your father and stuff if you want to. But it doesn't matter. Like this, you're dealing with the after effects of like schism that happened years before you came along.
Right.
It doesn't matter. The mom is already insane. Like the best solution for her, which we got, which is she goes off to a healer that may or may not work.
Right. But and you don't get to find out either.
Yeah, exactly. I love that so much. I looked that up too. I was like, oh, am I going to come back here? And I'm like, nope. Yeah. So it's like you get this question mark, but that's the best you can do.
Exactly.
In this. And that's really, really good.
And we didn't talk about in the storyline too, is there's this whole like abortion bit to it too, or miscarriage.
Yeah, the botchling.
Yeah,
the botchling is great.
The botchling is great, and the whole resolution to that, where you have to like force him to face it in order to give the botchling kind of the best exit out of this world.
Yeah. You chastise him and you say like, hey, you can't just have a miscarriage and throw it in a ditch. Like you can't run away from this stuff, and that's kind of the whole point of this character.
Yeah,
is that like this stuff is what's done is done, and you can't like run away from it or erase it. And mechanically it's just escorting a guy who eventually and fight off some spirits, right? Again, right. It's really bland, but the fact that this is an aborted baby that has to be named and buried under a stoop, to become a guardian spirit, because then it will feel loved. Mm-hmm. It just has that folk craft.
It's great.
that folk feeling, which is really, really cool. Like,
and you make the Baron come to terms with the shit he's done too.
Yeah.
Like as part of that, it kind of hits him in the face how much of this is his doing and
he
how
caused
big of a
the
shit.
miscarriage
Yeah.
by punching his wife.
Exactly.
You know?
And he's forced to face all this stuff, and that's when he starts essentially like trying to plead with you to be like, you know, here's my story. This is everything that's happened. This isn't all just me. And you're like, no, you're still shit.
It's
dude.
still just you. Like, I love it when he does that, because in his mind, like, you can see him kind of like deceiving himself.
Yep.
You know, about it. And it's like, no, you know, it doesn't matter like that she cheated on you when you were a terrible drunk.
Right.
You know, that you were a terrible drunk and you killed that guy in cold blood. You know, like, none of these things are okay.
You still have to face the shit though. Like that's what's great. Garrett still like makes him face everything, regardless of the fact that you can't change what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to be beholden to all this.
Yep.
It's great.
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of the morality in this game and the way it's not systemized. It's just a story that's told.
it's just there. It's just presented, and it feels messy and complicated, like real life. It made me really want to play a tabletop game that has this kind of sense of low magic.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know how fun it would be to actually like just do accounting for your reagents. You know, I don't want to like mark on a character sheet how many doll's heads and how many
right.
You know,
well, we never do that.
how many
shit
toenails.
anyway.
Yeah, exactly. We always leave that out. But like that part I don't want. But I do want that kind of flavor of like, you know, this is old, powerful, old world stuff. And
folk and nature, and
really makes me want to read the books, because if it invokes that just as well, like it's going to work really well in a book too.
Yeah.
What are there any like side quest stuff?
Yeah, there's one mission I did fairly recently that was just kind of a side mission as I was wandering around. I ran into these guys who were putting like they're at some altar and they're like giving the last bit of food they have and saying that they're cursed. They have this guardian spirit, but he's been unhappy with their tribute as of late, and that they're starving themselves to pay tribute, and it's not good enough. And so I tell them I'll help. I'll take a look around and see if I can't talk some sense into the spirit that they've been talking to. And you discover like a hidden entrance that just leads underneath the altar that they've been at, because they just hear this voice, So I get underneath there, and there's just this massive, schlubby, horned monster who's living under there and has like a little tube to talk up to the altar at the top, and he's just been living off of their food for like hundreds of years, right? He's just been making all the villagers who live nearby him pay tribute, and he'll not possibly perform some magic, possibly do nothing. He doesn't really divulge, right? But you can either fight him off and tell him, this isn't right, you're dead, or you can just be like, well, this is the world. Listen, you need to take less tribute. These people are starving. This isn't fair to them. And if you just kind of put up a little bit of puff your chest a little bit, and he'll be like, all right, okay.
You can get him to back down.
Yeah, you can get him to back down. You don't uproot anything. You don't tell the people, it's just some schlubby guy, some schlubby horned dude sitting underneath your stoop. But you tell him that he needs to accept lesser tribute, because that's all these guys can afford right now. There's a war going on out there. Just be kinder to these lowly folks. I really like that one.
That's great. I haven't done that one yet. It is definitely on the list though, as I clear question marks off my map. The one that I think of a lot, and it's you run into it on the main quest. You don't have to do it though. Is the tower full of mice thing with the tower on the island?
With the magic or the sorcerer guy.
Yeah, the plague lady. Yeah, in his lab.
Right.
And the weird plague spirit.
Yeah.
Which is like, again, it's just a short story where the damage is done. Like, I feel like after I get done with this thing, that's going to be a pretty decent thesis statement for the game, if they keep invoking this theme of like you coming along after it's too late to actually fix things.
You're just mopping everything up.
Yeah, you can't change history. The damage is done. Where there's like this peasant revolt, yada yada yada, that happened. This girl in there, this noblewoman, the peasants were storming the gates, and a sorcerer gave her a potion to take if things got bad, and she thought it was poison, but it was actually a sleeping potion that gave her like paralysis, like anesthesia paralysis, and rats ate her alive, which is really terrible.
Yeah.
This turns her into a plague spirit. Pretty cool. Great design on the plague spirit. the part where this gets great is to put her to rest. You have to bring her true love in, who you escort him up to this thing, and she's like terrifying. You know, she's got this huge tongue, all these pustules and stuff. She's got flies coming out of her, but he has to kiss her to make it. And like the way they frame that is really, really great, where he's approaching and it's like, oh God, you know, and then when the camera rotates around his head, like she's back how she was, you know, and then he dies, and that was worth it, you know, to like put her spirit to rest.
Right.
But like just having him have to do that kind of act was very like, the way it was framed was touching as opposed to for gross out. Like it was definitely gross, but it was like a pretty touching moment. And again, you know, Geralt acts like a camera in these things more than anything. Like he's just there to like, to be a tool. He doesn't judge, you know, he's never, at no point does he go like, yeah, it's pretty gross, I wouldn't do it. You know, it doesn't matter what he would do. You know, and that's your dialogue option a lot of times. Like it doesn't matter what I think. Yeah,
it is.
He's such a perfect cipher. Like if you're going to have a character with a voice, this is a really good way to do it.
Yeah.
I was really, really impressed with that. And there are a bunch of other ones as well. Not to mention just like walking through countryside shit that you just run across. That's really fun too.
It's pretty ass game. We didn't even talk about it in the main, but it's really pretty.
It's very pretty. I think that it does have a little bit of PS4 or like current gen stuff bloat. I hate how when you're galloping in a horse, if you hit a tree head on, you go to a dead stop. That happens to me constantly.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, Roach, no. You know, like just like
keep going.
Just shunt me around.
Get through all this shit.
There's a little bit too much clutter, but it is very pretty.
And one more thing I'll mention before we sign off is you haven't touched the card game in this game.
Oh yeah, we should probably talk about Gwent. Yeah. I did. I played a few hands of it, but I kind of decided I don't like it very much.
Okay,
but if you like it, let me know why, because I'm curious.
It's not great. It's, you know, it's not like super addictive or anything, but I'm playing it as I go through the game. I enjoy it enough to continue at it. I'm interested to see how the standalone comes out when you have like full decks to build from and games to play against other people. But I think that when you start off, it's very mechanically shallow in that you're just comparing numbers and there's not a whole lot of like wiggle room there. It's just like who has the bigger numbers in their deck right now, or who managed to draw bigger numbers into their hand. But as it's been going on, there's been more and more kind of effects that affect either the other side of the board or your own side in nice ways. Like there's stuff that kind of buff a whole row for you. But you have other cards that when cards get to be like a specific, like up to a high number, they're not able to be affected by stuff that buffs others. So it gives you like this balanced way between stuff that actually is just straight high numbers or stuff that has the ability to be buffed. And there's things like playing spy cards that they get played to the other side of the line. You're giving your other guy power points essentially, but what you get to do is draw a card for that. So you're giving them points, but you get to draw a card. There's a whole bunch of like more effects that are coming up, and I'm actually starting to like it more and more as the effects kind of build on top of just trying to fight numbers by what hand I drew.
It starts off a lot like War. Yeah. You know, like where, and that's, you know, I realized that it would get more complicated, especially if they were going to be setting up a standalone game. I think the thing that bummed me out about it was that cards can become completely outmoded, you know? So at a certain point, like they do start kind of messing with that, where you can add effects, but like a 5 card is always going to be better than a 4 card, you know, if with all other things being equal,
right?
You know, and it reminded me, I mean, obviously, like when I think about card games in these games, I think about Triple Triad from Final Fantasy VIII, and the reason why I like Triple Triad a little bit more, at least on first blush, is that they start introducing those weird little side rules that allow you to make your small cards really viable. So, you know, it starts being not about which card is bigger. It starts becoming about which card adds up to what, or which card is even, or cards matching, things like that.
Yeah.
And maybe maybe that does get introduced, but this just gets introduced faster.
Yeah.
In that game than it does in this one, and maybe that's what makes the difference for me.
I'm hoping that it continues to build in the way it has so far, because if there are more like continual effects and not just kind of the few I've seen so far, it could end up shaping up to be really cool. But if it does do that, then they started it off terribly, because it starts out
really bland.
It's super bland, and if you just kind of hold out until some of these cooler cards start coming out, then fighting anyone earlier in the game where you get kind of some unique cards and stuff is just going to be a terrible bland fight. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like because like card games that start with this kind of from the start as kind of balance, they try to make it so like low value cards are still valuable and have a good chance of winning. This just again, it feels like war, but you can have a deck with a lot of good cards in it. It's like war where you can have a deck full of aces.
Yeah, there needs to be more cards that punish
more
someone
like
else. Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Yeah, more cards with effects that kind of punish for playing too high on another end. Like, I want to see something that shakes it up a bit more. I've seen one card so far that if the opponent's melee range cards are in excess of 10, then playing this card, which gets played into your melee range, will knock out their highest powered card on there. And that's cool. Like, hey, you stacked up this rail, like, get punished for it.
Yeah.
Right?
And knock you down. Yeah.
More stuff like that needs to be in effect, and needs to be effect right from the beginning. I don't know. It was a terrible choice for them to make it so bland.
I think they're just trying to ease you into it, but like
it doesn't work.
I don't think it works very well.
Yeah.
So I mean, other people I know really dig it. I know a lot of people who just spent their whole time playing that. Part of the reason why I'm not getting into it is because I want to finish the game too.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like I want the written content. When the solo standalone game comes out, that looks much more interesting, and I'll probably pick that up.
Yeah.
Because like a game built around that, I bet you will have kind of more considerations.
Yeah.
So
let's hope.
Yeah. So thanks for listening to this long episode of the show.
Yeah.
And we will be back in 2 weeks with Abzu and Factorio.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening.
Good night.